أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, dear brothers and sisters. May God accept our prayers and fasts and our deeds during this holy month. I'd like to welcome you all and welcome our guests as well. Continuing from where we left off last night, talking about the different levels of perceiving religious laws and commandments, we talked about there being three different levels. The first level being the letter of the law, which is the outer shell. There's a commandment, there's a instruction that's given, such as praying, such as fasting, such as giving charity, such as going to pilgrimage. And then we have the second level, which is the path that you walk on. So when you're doing these actions, when you're praying, when you're fasting, when you're fulfilling these commandments, you have to do them with contemplation. You have to do them consciously. You have to do them with pure intentions and pure hearts and with the intention of growing spiritually. It's not just enough to fulfill the commandments in order to be a good person. You could be someone who, on the outside, fulfills all the criteria to be an individual that belongs to a certain religion or faith group. But on the inside, you could be a corrupt individual. And we see this a lot in our daily lives, whether it's to do with religion or to do with our regular daily etiquettes. You belong to a certain organization, you belong to a certain work group, and on the outside, you seem to be this very professional individual. You seem to be, you put a very good face in front of other people. But in reality, if people get to know you on a personal level, they find that there's a different face. Because what you're doing is for publicity, and what you're doing is to please other people in those certain contexts that you're in. The objective that comes from these religious commandments is to purify ourselves, is to be able to make our outside and our inside the same. And this is what's meant by getting rid of hypocrisy. To be a hypocritical person is to show something or display something on the outside that differs from what's on the inside. And this is not how an individual should be. If the veils are lifted from someone and we're able to find out what's going on through our minds and thoughts of the other people, the best situation is that whatever's in their mind is reflected in their actions. And this is where we come to the second ruling regarding fasting. Yesterday we talked about the definition of fasting, which is abstention. And we talked about the different levels of abstaining. The first level is not doing the things that invalidate the fast, which is not eating, not drinking, and the other things that we're not supposed to do. If you fulfill those, you've done the fast. But you haven't reached the true meaning and depth of what's required from the fast. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and his family says that there are people who fast and they get nothing from fasting other than hunger and thirst. This is the only thing that they achieve from fasting. So that then he commands us by saying that when you fast, let your eyes fast, let your mouth fast, let your ears fast, your organs, let them fast as well. Don't talk bad about people. Don't backbite people. Don't say hurtful things to other people. These are things that we have to work on, and the outer fast is just a preliminary introduction to strengthen us into becoming better individuals in the long run. The second ruling that we're going to talk about today is intention. On the outer level, every worship in our religion and commandments requires an intention. If you pray, you have to have an intention when you pray. What are you doing? And intention basically means that you know what you're doing and that you're doing it purely for God. When you're standing for prayer, you're not supposed to stand in order to show off that you're a good individual and you're a good believer in front of other people. Then you're not praying purely for God. You're praying in order to give yourself a good image. When you're giving charity, when you're going to pilgrimage, when you're fasting, your intention has to be, I am doing this solely for the purpose of pleasing God and being one with God. This is for every act of worship. So fasting is one of those things. The intention is required. Now, before the scholars, they differ in this matter. Some say that you can make one intention for the whole month of Ramadan, that you're going to fast the whole month, or you can make the intention day by day. It has to be before morning prayer. This is on the outer level. On the inner level, we have to work as individuals in purifying our hearts. And when it comes to this issue and we analyze it, we see that us as human beings, we have two aspects that usually work when we do things. We have something called the intention, and then we have the action. And there's always been a debate in philosophy discussing which one is more important. How do we judge people? How do we judge individuals? Do we judge people by their actions, or do we judge people by their intentions? And this has really been a very big moral question. Until this day, it hasn't been resolved. There's one author who went through the collected works of Gandhi, and I think there are over 40 volumes, and he wanted to see what his position was on this matter. And even within his own works, he found that even Gandhi had differing positions on this matter. In one situation, he said that the criteria that we should have when we want to do something is our motive and intention. And in another place, he said that we shouldn't judge by intentions, we should judge by the action and outcome that comes from the individual's action. So which one do we choose? Which one do we prefer? I could have, let's say, a good intention, but I come and I behave and I do something, and the action is bad. Let's take an example. Parents who raise their children but are overly protective. They want to control everything the child does in their life. If you ask the mother or father who does this, of course they're not going to tell you that we have a bad intention with our children, we're trying to harm them. They say that we're doing this out of our love, out of our care. I'm trying to protect my child. But in reality, what's happening is that they're not allowing that child to grow independently. They're not allowing that child to discover their own capacity and to build their own strengths. That overprotection, even though the intention is good, the action and outcome is bad. So a lot of people in our societies think that just by intending good, that's good enough, without thinking of the consequence of our actions and what they could lead to. This is one aspect. Another aspect, I could have a bad intention, but when I come and behave, I have a good outcome and good action. A contemporary example, if we look at a lot of the TikTokers and social media influencers, which is a growing phenomenon nowadays, a lot of people tend to publicly show and display their charity work. We always find these short clips and videos of individuals going and giving money to the poor, finding the needy and giving them money and helping them out, and there's a lot of examples of this. And there's been a debate. Is this a good thing or a bad thing? When you give charity to an individual and you try to be nice to people and you help them out, why are you recording it? Are you really doing it with pure intentions? Or are you doing it because you want to gain publicity and you want to get more subscribers and more likes, and at the end of the day you get more profit and money because you're playing with people's emotions? Now the action is good. The action is helping a lot of poor people. It's helping a lot of people in need. But the intention might not be purely to help those individuals. So how do we judge these situations? How do we behave as individuals? Well, of course, this topic is something that we're going to explore in the next few days, and we're going to talk about the different consequences of each and every one. Are we able to strike a balance between the two? And we're going to talk about the different levels of intention that we can have. Ultimately, as a religious individual, you want to purify your intention and make it solely for God. Now, what does this mean? Does it mean that you are doing an action and you don't deserve any credit for it? Because a lot of people that object to this say that, why should I give all my credit to God? He didn't do anything. I'm the one who did this. So what does it mean that when we do something for God and we attribute something to God? In reality, it all depends on how we define God and how we understand God. If we see God as the ultimate reality, as the absolute reality that transcends every limitation in this existence, then when we do an action for God, what we're trying to do is we're trying to make our action wider and greater so that it transcends our own limitations. When I do good, and it's for my own self and my own ego and my own pride, then that goodness is confined to my capacity and my level as an individual. But when I try to transcend myself, and I give charity, or I do kindness, or I do good for the sake of that absolute reality which we call God, then really what we're doing ultimately is we're trying to connect to every existent and every being in this existence. Our action becomes much greater, much purer. This is the mentality that we should have. And as we do this, and as we continue doing this, our connection to every human being grows. Our connection to every creature in this existence grows. Our connection to nature grows. Why? Because we're going beyond ourselves. We begin seeing that every existence in this world is related and connected. I'm not the only one that was created. Everything else in this world also exists and also has a share of existence. I'm not living here alone. I'm sharing this existence with all these other creatures and all these other beings. So I must be conscious of them. I must be wary of them. I must understand that the world does not revolve around me. And living in this kind of lifestyle and living with this kind of mentality allows you to have an internal peace that you don't have if you think that everything revolves around yourself. And this is what fasting ultimately tries to do. It makes you purify yourself. It gives you time by not eating and drinking for a certain number of hours to be able to contemplate and focus on your inside instead of being occupied with your outer senses. So when we fast, we should try every single day when we do any action, let's analyze our intentions. Let's think about why we're doing these things. Am I doing it for myself? And one way to judge this is to think, if there was no one around me, there was no one looking at me, and no one seeing me, and there's no cameras around, would I do that same good thing with the same amount of energy or not? That's one way to be able to judge and analyze whether our intentions are pure or not. Of course, when we do something with that intention, it doesn't mean that we don't get any credit. The opposite is true. We grow spiritually, our mental state becomes better and healthier, and we're able to become much, much healthier human beings, not just on a personal level, but on a collective level as well. If everybody was practicing this, then the community as a whole becomes a healthier community. This is what I wanted to introduce today, just the concept of intention and action. And inshallah, God willing, in the next night or two, we'll go into more depth and give more examples, and we'll be able to discuss this in more detail. I ask God to allow us to purify our hearts and purify our souls, and allow us to benefit from this month in the best manner so that we come out of it purified and as reformed and changed individuals. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, wa sallallahu ala Muhammadin wa alihi al-tayyibin al-tahirin.
Have you found your glasses?
Yes, sir. I was going to lose them again.
Something around that. Yeah, still we have time, 2 or 3 minutes.